Hello, YouTubers, and welcome back to another episode of the Grandstand here on the Ohio Patriot Education Network YouTube channel. I'm, as always, your host, AR the Ohio Patriot. And for today's episode, we're going to be talking about North Carolina jumping into the constitutional carry game. So, basically, in the last day or so, as far as I'm aware, South Carolina, which should be number 28 in the constitutional carry list, still has their Second Amendment Preservation Act / constitutional carry bill sort of hanging out in their state senate. They really haven't done anything with it as far as I'm aware. I have no idea how long the General Assembly lasts from now. It might be the rest of the year. It might be, a couple months from now or whatever. Or it might be a special session they come back and do it in. Who the hell knows? But anyway, as far as I'm aware, it's basically hanging out in committee right now. Or it's basically hanging out in the Senate right now to be doing committee hearings there. And then eventually, hopefully, we'll get to McMaster's desk and he'll sign it into law, obviously, there. That being said, North Carolina has officially jumped in the game now. They had some kind of committee hearing, I believe it was yesterday, where they basically pushed forward House Bill, I believe it's 189, and they more or less are just going to read what it is here, because one thing I think is interesting, though, and this is something that came from one of the guys who actually lives there in North Carolina, was saying how I guess there's some kind of weird amendment in it that talks about like a training requirement to be able to essentially constitutional carry, but yet there's no way to physically enforce said training requirement. So I have no idea if it's like some, fucking piece of shit Karen who's a Mom's Main Action member who somehow got in the North Carolina General Assembly or whatever and tried to push it as amendment, or if it's some fucking bribe piece of shit Democrat that is bribed by Mom's Main Action that pushed forward that piece of shit amendment. And then I'm guessing probably some Republican was like, okay, let's go ahead and tweak the language on this a little bit, or whatever the case be, to make it sort of unenforceable a little bit then. But either way, I think it's very interesting in general. But that being said, going to go ahead and bring up the text here for this stuff. So obviously this is the House bill here, 189. It was committee substitute favorable 5/2/2023. This was all the way back in February 2023 was when apparently this was submitted, so it was like 9 days ago, which is called the NC Constitutional Carry Act for short title. And then it was a bill to be entitled An Act to Protect a Person's Right to Carry a Concealed Handgun Without a Permit and Continue Allowing Persons to Acquire a Concealed Handgun Permit for the purposes of reciprocity or for any other reason desired, and to authorize officials elected in the state to carry a concealed firearm while performing their official duties if the official has a concealed handgun permit. So essentially that last bit there, the authorized official thing there, could be a couple different things. It's most likely police / military, or like federal agents and stuff like that. Or it could also be, for that same vein of things, elected officials for that matter, or it would be like some politician or whatever, like some state rep or whatever it is there, who technically could be thrown into the mix or whatever there, and be like, okay, well, I technically have the legal ability to carry here because I actually do have a, CHL or CCW, whatever you want to call it there. And it's a situation where it's like basically a way to sort of cover all their bases, what it is there. Because the entire point is, unfortunately, with the way our country works currently, you have a lot of restricted areas still, even with constitutional carry and stuff like that in states. And I think it's absolute bullshit personally, because if you're going to allow it to be in a state, you should be able to carry anywhere the fuck you want, dude. I don't care if it's a church. I don't care if it's a government building, any place like that, honestly. You should be legally allowed to carry is what it is, because it's not true freedom if you're having government tell you, oh, X, Y, and Z places are off limits. And then, by the way, if you go into those places and they don't have armed security and something does happen, oh, I guess you're just shit out of luck then if you get killed in the fucking massacre or something like that. So, yeah, it's a bunch of BS entirely. And it really does irritate the fuck out of me is what it is, dude. Just like when I went to go vote yesterday, I couldn't legally carry into that place because technically it's a voting place, and it's like a whole thing with our state right now is what it is. So, anyway, it's just a bunch of BS entirely. But going back to reading a little bit more of this, though, this is what I thought was interesting, though, when it comes to the weapons here. So, except as otherwise provided by law, it is unlawful for any person to willingly or intentionally to carry concealed about his or her person any Bowie knife, dirk, which I had to even look that up. Apparently, some kind of dagger, and then they specifically named dagger after that. So it's like a variation of a dagger, and then it's an actual dagger. Slungshot, which I had to even look that up because I'm like, that's not a slingshot. What the hell's a slungshot? And apparently, it's like a literal fucking piece of rope that has like a little bulge on the back of it or whatever. You put a fucking rock into, and it's basically David versus Goliath shit at that point. It's what David basically used to kill Goliath, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, so you got those things that are prohibited. Loaded cane, which is obviously either you got a sword and a cane, or the cane's like basically weighted to beat shit out somebody with it. Metallic knuckles, which I'm assuming are some kind of brass knucks that are metallic. Then a razor, a shuriken, which I think is fucking like who the hell is writing these laws, dude? Like seriously, I feel like this definitely has to be like some 1970 shit right here, honestly, right here, just because it's like, okay, did some random ninja, like some literal fucking guy from Asia or whatever the case be, come over to America, who happened to be a martial arts master and have a shuriken with him at the time, and he got busted with a shuriken, and they're just like, okay, you can't legally carry this in the state, dude. It's fucking ridiculous, dude, is what it is. And then you also got stun guns prohibited and any other deadly weapon of any kind or like kind, except when the person is on the person's own premises. So if you're on your own property is what it is. And this is for the purposes of this section. The term weapon does not include firearm. So that's the only thing they're taking off basically is, and this is the big thing too, like going back to when Ohio passed our constitutional carry about a year ago almost now, because it'll be June 13th of this year will be the 1 year anniversary of both constitutional carry and of Ohio Patriot Education Network. So you basically have a version that was the House version that never got passed through. That its initial version, when it was before it was watered down and stuff like that by a bunch of scumbag rhinos here in Ohio, you could have basically concealed any weapon of any kind. It could have been a knife, could have been a extendable baton, et cetera, on your person. But of course, they wrote that out. And you had that douchebag, and this is, by the way, why I fucking hate Bill Seitz to this day, and why I will continue to hate his fucking ass, because that son of a bitch had the audacity to try to claim, oh, this is the Antifa amendment. Like, fuck you, old man. If it was really that, dude, like, those motherfuckers are going to do anything anyway because they're all fucking criminals anyway. They're all felons anyway. Doesn't matter, dude. The entire point would be it would allow armed citizens who aren't over the age of 21 yet to have the ability to carry something to protect themselves from possible gang mentality from an Antifa or BLM terrorism group like that. You know, from getting jumped out in the streets or shit, just walking down in fucking Columbus and shit nowadays, dude, and not getting their asses kicked by a bunch of homeless junkies and shit, for that matter. So, yeah, it's a bunch of BS entirely. But I think that's kind of what they're doing there is they're just basically limiting it to handgun to actual firearms instead of actually just like any weapons would be then. So, and then it basically kicks out a bunch of stuff that used to be needed, like actual permitting and stuff like that. And then it talks about other stuff here as well. So some of the exceptions listed in subsection B of the section include a condition that the person have a concealed handgun permit. In those circumstances, a person must still have a concealed handgun permit issued in accordance with the articles of that statute of that state and stuff like that, et cetera, et cetera. I'm thinking that's basically for if you're going to walk into a government building or something like that with it. So it wouldn't be technically, everywhere is freedom now. It'd just be like certain places is what it would be then. And then, as I said here, it says carrying concealed handgun. A person who is a citizen of the United States and at least 18 years old may carry a concealed handgun in the state upon completion of an approved this is what we're talking about, of an approved firearms safety and training course as described in subsection C of this section, unless provided otherwise by law. B, offense. It is unlawful for a person who meets any of the following criteria to carry a concealed handgun. 1, is ineligible to own, possess, or receive a firearm under the previous state of or federal law. So obviously, if they're a felon. Again, second one there is under felony indictment. 3, has been adjudicated guilty of any court of a felony unless the felony is an offense that pertains to antitrust violations, unfair trade practices, restrictions of trade, or other similar offenses related to the regulation of business practices, or the person's firearms rights have been restored. Basically, getting your rights restored is what we're talking about there. 4 is a fugitive from justice. 5 is an unlawful user of or addicted to weed, alcohol, or any antidepressant, stimulant, etc., etc. And 6 is currently or has been previously adjudicated in the court by basically mentally ill. So that 6th one is. 7 has been dishonorably discharged from the U.S. military, and then it goes on to do other stuff. There's what I'm talking about there. But yeah, I thought that was interesting though about the supposed firearms training course requirement. But it's interesting though, right? Because unlike Ohio, it's 18 and over. It's not 21 and over. So that is definitely something interesting there. And I think this one honestly would be similar to what Indiana put in place because there's 18 and over 2 as well. So that being said, Indiana also has red flag laws still on the books, which is fucking retarded. Because again, it's sort of the same thing with Florida right now, right? Like Florida has technically permitless carry, but they also have red flag laws on the books, and it's like, get rid of your fucking red flag laws, people. They're all unconstitutional. So, anyway, and then going down there, it says C, valid information identification required, disclosed to law enforcement officer when carrying concealed. Okay, so basically you have to have a ID on you when you're concealed carrying is what they're saying there. And it talks about the penalties for not having that stuff. And then here we go. An approved firearm safety and training course is one that involves instruction in laws of state government governing the carrying of a concealed handgun and the use of deadly force. So essentially a CCW course is what they're talking about there. Prepare and publish general guidelines for courses and qualifications of instructors which would satisfy the requirements for the subsection, including online courses that document attendance and require active participation. As approved course shall be any course which satisfies the requirements of the subsection as certified or sponsored by any of the following: the North Carolina Criminal Justice Education and Training Standards Commission, the NRA, the United States Concealed Carry Association, so USCCA, and 4, a law enforcement agency, college, private or public institution or organization or firearms training school taught by instructors certified by the North Carolina Criminal Justice Education and Training Standards Commission, USCCA, or the NRA. So interesting. So essentially what it sounds like to me is you might as well call this the NRA constitutional carry, because it essentially is forcing you to get an NRA approved or USCCA approved, could be both of them actually in league together, bullshit qualification, or it would be some kind of state mandate is what it would be then. Which the fact that they're specifically naming the NRA and USCCA in them as two different ones as well is very fucking fishy to me, and it kind of makes me wonder who actually wrote this. And I'm thinking it probably is the NRA/USCCA. There's probably people that actually wrote the damn bill, is what it is my guess. Because that's the thing, right? Like when you start looking into all this legislation like this, it's never a lawmaker, it's never a state rep, it's never a state senator, etc., never a governor. It's 100% of the time some lobbying group, whether it be the NRA, whether it be on the opposite side for anti-gun laws, Moms Debate Action, Everytown, etc., etc. And most of the time, when you look at all the shit that Bloomberg is pushing through and stuff like that for all the anti-gun shit, if they do it in one state, they literally will just copy and paste that and, X out like California and then write in Ohio or write in Michigan or write in North Carolina or something like that. And it's the same exact fucking wording verbatim. It just happens to be another state they're pushing it into is what it is then. And I think it's kind of like this as well with that sort of situation there with North Carolina. It'd be like whoever's writing it is probably with some pro-gun organization, whether it be the NRA or the USCCA or whatever the case be, or a mix thereof is what it would be then. And the thing is, essentially at the end of the day, what it really comes down to be, and it really boils down to be, it's always about the money. It's always about the money, dude. Because that's the entire point, right? So you're essentially forcing people to take a concealed carry course with your instructors to be able to constitutionally carry in their state. And the whole fucking point, by the way, of constitutional carry, on people like me are fighting for constitutional carry in all 50 states right now, is to stop fucking with poor people's financials. Because that's the entire point, dude. When you look at what is the permitting system in this country, which is a bullshit, unjust system at this point, it is nothing more than the government trying to extort you for fucking money and then be like, here's your permission slip to carry in our state or carry in all these other states now. Instead of just being like, There's a little thing called the U.S. Constitution, the Second Amendment of it. You have the right to do whatever the fuck you want as a free person. And it's as simple as that. And that's how it should be across the board right now, dude. I should be able to walk into any state right now that is a constitutional carry state, constitutional carrying, and it should not matter. And even for the states that aren't, I should be able to do that same thing without having to have a permit to do that. So, and it's bullshit that I can't. And it's bullshit nobody else can either, for that matter, without risking getting a felony or without risking getting, multiple other crimes for that matter is what it is. Actually, multiple felonies probably is what it would be then. But yeah, it's just a bunch of BS entirely. But either way, thought it was interesting. Thought that particular part of it was very, very interesting in this, like reading through this and stuff like that. So yeah, it definitely. I think they need to gut that garbage out of it is what it is, and they do this to a full floor vote and stuff like that. And then from there, basically just pass it as is after the fact. Then, huh. So apparently they're talking about the possibility of this having concealed carry on campuses too as well in this, or at least partially anyway, doing parades and stuff as well. Yeah, it'd pretty much be any place you should be able to carry, which is, exactly where it's at there. Let's see, enforcement, agency, inspectors, protectors, refusal to obey and inspect. Okay, yeah, it doesn't really matter. Okay, I'm just reading this little verbatim bits here is what it is on this. Go ahead and grab this up again. I was specifically reading this whole junk right here for the 113 to 136. Let's see, expanded permit scope for certain persons. Okay, so they're basically saying who can be. Oh, here you go. Here you go. This is who's basically allowed to carry concealed with a permit. Is what it would be: district attorney, ADA, investigator employed by the office of a district attorney, North Carolina district or superior court judge, a magistrate, a person who is elected and serving as a clerk of courts, or a person who is elected and serving as a register of deeds, a person employed by the Department of Public Safety who has been designated in writing as the secretary of the department and who has, in the person's profession, written proof of the designation, and the North Carolina administrative law judge. So that's who you can actually carry then, with permitting and stuff like that, wherever the fuck they want then. It would be like a DA and ADA, et cetera, et cetera. Interesting. So that's really interesting too, actually, because it wouldn't even be like every elected official. It wouldn't even be like state reps and state senators and stuff like that. It'd just be like, no, like here's this, county judge / DA or ADA or whatever the case be. It's like, yeah, they can carry. Like that's kind of scummy, honestly, in general, dude. Because it's like, who doesn't put themselves in there, right? Like, if you're the ones passing this shit as a state rep or a state senator, dude, why wouldn't you add yourself in that motherfucker? Like, I would for 100%, dude, all the time. So, anyway, maybe that's just me though. But yeah, so that's basically it for the legislation here. I think it's pretty interesting though. It'll be interesting to see if this passes or not. I think depending on where this goes, though, I think it gives more credence to Mark Robinson's bid for governor next year in North Carolina, and I would not be surprised to see him championing this. Actually, technically speaking, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually had a hand in at least looking over this piece of legislation before it was submitted into actual General Assembly there, as lieutenant governors would be then. Whether it be he worked with the NRA / USCCA to write the shit, or whether it be he just like oversaw them writing is what it would be then, and then handing it over to the state reps to submit is what it would be then. So either way, thought it was pretty interesting. Thought I'd bring you guys that real quick, and yeah, that's pretty much it for the day. So hopefully by the end of the year we will have North Carolina be number 29, baby, and we will be one step closer to that magical number 30, and then eventually that magical 38 is what we need to actually force the other 12 to just get on board then, because if we can actually get up to 38 states for constitutional carry, we can actually force the hand of every state in the United States then to be a constitutional carry state nationwide by an actual convention of states. And that's all that needs to be said about the end of the day. And that's what we should be aiming for right now, is that 38, that magical 38 number is where we need to be right now. And if we can get there as fast as possible, the more the better, honestly, is the way I look at it. And now is the time to hammer down, dude. Now is the time to start booting gun controllers the fuck out of your state houses and your state senates and stuff like that, replacing them with good, honest people, if nothing else. Make a stink yourself at some school board meeting or whatever the case be, like I was telling everybody on Honda's Rumble chat earlier tonight. Do what Mark Robinson did. Make a name for yourself and use that 15 seconds of fame, that 15 minutes of fame, whatever it is, and run for office. Take down a seat of power in any state that you can do so. Do what needs to be done there and do something that's going to better this country overall is what it is. And if you can take it down, good, because then you will be the constitutionalist, you will be the 2A champion, you will be the actual gun rights advocate and activist out there that give a shit about this country and give a shit about people's rights, to be able to be the ones now writing the laws and passing the laws instead of just some outsider person that's lobbying a person in office to do that. Like, no, you're going to be the person that's doing it now. And it's as simple as that. That's what we need to be, man. We need to be priming the fuck out of everybody at this point. That is not for our rights. That is a bunch of oath-breaking assholes. And we need to be taking their damn jobs is what it is. It's as simple as that. Hope you guys enjoy this episode, and I'll see y'all in the next one.